Hey, I'm Josh from Vacuums R Us and Sewing 2 in Colorado again, and today we've got a Riccar or a Simplicity. It's a Simplicity, but this is also going to apply to those of you who have Riccars. This was brought in for service, but it also was brought in, people tend not to bring their machines in for regular maintenance. They bring it in when something's wrong. And what's wrong is the brush isn't spinning. So this is a Simplicity S20. It's a S20D, I believe, is the model. This video is going to apply to anybody who has an S20 or R20, D, P, or UP. So that's a deluxe, premium, or ultra premium. It's not going to apply to people who have an S20S, which is standard, or I believe there's another one called an S20E, which is entry. So anybody with a with an S20D, P, or UP, or in the Riccar product line, the Riccar R20 D, P, or UP, this will apply to. You can tell if you have one, you're going to have this kind of square shaped body. You will have a bag that has a red dock on it. So that'll be a sign that this applies to you. And finally, there's going to be a switch right here that turns the brush roll on and off. So on the S20S or R20S, the standard, there is no switch right here. And so this video is not going to be really relevant to you if you have that machine. They're a very different design. So if you're not getting brush spin, this video is not going to help you for that. If that's the case, honestly, if you have no brush spin on one of those models, the R20 or S20 standard S, you just have a broken belt typically. On these, it gets a little more complicated. There's a clutch mechanism. So that switch that you've got right there, the on-off switch, activates a clutch mechanism. It's got a high failure rate, not the best design. I think that's probably part of the reason they discontinued this design entirely, because there have been a lot of issues with it. So we're going to dig into it. I'm going to flip the machine over. As I've mentioned in my past videos, my benches are at waist height for this reason. I'm able to get the machine right here, keep it secure, and work on it from here. So on these machines, your base plate, you don't need to take these two screws out. Leave those in. You move those tabs over and your base plate will pop out entirely. So we have no belt on this. I think there, if I remember correctly, there was a tech in this before me who ordered some parts for this. So we have no belt. Clearly somebody's been in here, but I want to check the clutch on this. Your clutch mechanism is over here, and it attaches to this switch, and the switch will actuate that clutch. So the way it works is right now our brush is spinning freely. If we had a belt on this, it would not be spinning the brush because they're separate, right? The idea is when we engage this mechanism, the clutch will come tight against the brush roll, and when we do have a brush, you can see it's spinning a little bit. I'm sorry, when we do have a belt, that belt will spin this little gear, and then that clutch will engage with the brush roll and the brush will spin. You can see it'll spin a little bit, but not much, and that's because we're stripped. So you can test your clutch by engaging it, right? So you engage the clutch and hold this, put some pressure onto the brush roller itself, and then see if you can spin the wheel here independently without tension or significant tension against the brush. And so we're able to spin it significantly without really any significant tension. Like we can just stop the brush just like that, right? So that means our clutch is worn out, or there's something out of alignment here somewhere. Something's going on. One thing I do know, and this is they have a lot of housing issues with these machines. If you see right here, you see there's like a metal tab right here. That's supposed to go right here, and it's off center, it's kicking out. And often that takes place because the housing is wearing out. So I'm going to try to put that back in properly. So on these brush rolls, there's these two little teeth right here. There's these two little teeth, and they sit down right there. And the idea is that'll keep the brush roll from rolling backwards. So I'm going to reinsert this with those teeth down and get it in there properly so it's now good and stable. I'll reattach the actuator arm right here. Then I'll re-engage the clutch, and now actually we have, yep, it's actually quite good. The clutch is actually fine. So in this case, this is actually diagnosed as a bad clutch. The previous technician didn't look into it that thoroughly. The clutch was not bad. This brush roll had just moved a little bit, and so this actuator arm was not able to tighten the clutch down enough because the brush was offset a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and put a belt in it, and we'll test it real quick. Pop it out. This is the old belt. So we're going to actually use a Dirt Devils Royal Type 12 belt here. We've been using those for a lot of the Riccar and Simplicity machines. The Riccar and Simplicity belt price went through the roof a little while back. I'm not exactly sure why. And so we swapped out to these belts. They're considerably less expensive. Other issue that we get into with these is I mentioned that the housings start to wear out. So as the housings wear out, the motor mounts, which are rubber, the motor's got like rubber mounts that it's in, they start to wear over time and the whole motor starts to shift this direction, right? And so as it shifts this direction, the belt sets on the motor shaft over here. As it shifts, then the belt will slide off the end of the motor shaft like that, right? And so there's a number of ways to deal with that. That's not a repair we do anymore. We don't actually repair that. What we found is the failure rate on those repairs is very high. Any of the shimming and stuff like that we've done in the past doesn't really work out very well. So what we're doing is we're simply putting slightly looser belts on them, which is a Royal Style 12. If you go to the schematics for any of these machines on our site, you'll see that that's offered as an alternative belt. We've got them on our website. I'll try to make sure that the link gets put down there. Real quick, before I put this belt on though, I'm going to service the brush roller really quick here. So I'll pop off the ends. There's a cotter pin that holds this together. You can pop that out with a screwdriver. Be careful not to lose it because it can fly out. So on these brushes, I line everything up as I take it apart because there's a lot of parts in here. So there's one plastic washer right here. It's a spacer. That's very important. If you don't have these spacers in here properly, or you don't have enough spacers, or you lose spacers, what happens is there's not enough tension when the clutch gets pushed together. There's too much space and your brush won't spin, your clutch will slip. So those spaces are actually important. That goes on, that goes in. There's part of the clutch. There's a spring that goes between the clutch and the brush roller. And now this will pop out for us. And so a couple things here. There's a felt seal down here on this end. In this case, this felt seal is in relatively good shape. It's got a little bit of dirt on it. The felt seal is in relatively good shape. The felt seal is important too. We also sell those. They deteriorate over time. It does two things. It keeps debris, like hair, from getting into the bearing in here. The other thing it does though is it pads out the brush roller so that, again, your clutch will fully engage. Once that felt seal completely wears out, you can end up having some space in your clutch, and you'll find that your clutch is no longer properly engaging. So these strips are clean. They're in decent shape. They probably could be replaced, but it doesn't look like the customer's authorized that. Yeah, they have not. Yeah, they've not authorized that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to oil the bearings real quick. Just put a little bit of grease on that bearing. And then the other bearing is inside the clutch, the pulley assembly right there. And we'll put that back together real quick. All right, so spring goes in, and then clutch goes in. So you have two sides. This is the outside. This is the clutch pad. That goes inside and makes contact with the rubber pad. This part I always mix this part up. I can never quite figure out which direction these go. Typically when you're taking them apart, you'll see abrasions on this disc right here. The abrasions are what come in contact against the, if I remember correctly, the abrasions are what come in contact with the clutch holder. Let me see if I can get it on. Nope, I put it on backwards. Yeah, the abrasions go out. That's right, the abrasions go out, and then this thing goes in. Get on there. There we go. Okay, so here's what we got. I'm gonna hold this up for a second because this is the area of the video that most people are actually looking for at this point, and are gonna want to pause this. So your abrasions, you'll see your abrasion marks are gonna go on the outside, and then this thing has these little like channels right here. Those go against the abrasion marks. So the way the clutch works is when you have the actuator arm in here, you'll pull the actuator arm down, and that will tighten your clutch, right? So you let your actuator arm up, that will loosen your clutch. You pull the actuator down, it will tighten the clutch. So these right here, these channels are going to engage with each other. So that's put together properly. And then I'm going to, again, these spacer washers are very important. They're fiber washers for a reason. You can't replace them with metal washers. I've tried, and the metal ends up grinding down and damaging the brush roll. Put that together. Pop that in right there. Okay, so we have our little notch, our little hook where the actuator arm goes in is on top, and then we have these pegs in the bottom which go into the housing, right? Rubber cap goes on the intake side where we have the dust intake. So I'm going to put the belt on, and this gets a little bit more difficult now that we have tension because we have the belt on. I usually put this arm off to the side a little bit right here. So this is great having it up on a bench like this because you can put your whole body against it to hold it. And then I'll just kind of push it forward, making sure that I'm pushing it straight down so that those teeth that were not engaged to begin with properly engage and this thing gets in straight. I can see that it is. That's fantastic. And then I'm gonna slide this disc down so that I can get the actuator arm to just pop right in. And the actuator arm is popped in. So the clutch is unengaged. We have free spinning. The belt will continue to run when it's engaged in that way, but it will not spin the brush. I'm going to engage the clutch, tighten the clutch up. Now as I manually turn the belt, you'll see that the clutch is engaged and the brush does spin. If I add tension to the brush, significant tension, I'm still getting good engagement of the clutch. It's still pulling back against me. So the other thing I do, and I mentioned that there's the problems with the housings on these. So the other thing I do is I look down here to see if this new belt, because we put a new belt on it, right? To see if the new belt is going to pull off the motor shaft, because the motor has started to bend this way, right? So I get the belt on right, centered on the shaft, and I've got some of the end of the shaft is visible, right? And ideally that's where we should be, right? We should be centered on the pulley up here. We should be centered on the motor shaft. That's ideally what we want to see. So as I manually spin the brush roller, we'll find, I believe, yep, we'll see that the belt is creeping off the end of the motor shaft, and that's because the motor shaft is actually crooked because the motor housing is going bad and the motor is shifting. And this is on a style 12 belt, Royal style 12, which is really just a tiny bit stretchier and larger than the genuine Royal belt. So it's actually less inclined to slip off than the genuine belts are, and yet still we're getting this belt slippage right here. You see the belt is now coming into the actuator assembly here, the switch assembly that turns this actuator arm off and on, and so the belt will probably start to burn into that. It's unfortunate. You know, this was a good machine. It worked really well. The design was not great, and I don't think any of us realized that until the machines have been in the field several years and we started seeing these issues at this point. They have discontinued it, fortunately. They did honor the warranty periods that they had with these machines and resolved any of the issues as they were coming up. But it is a problematic machine. It's a really problematic machine, and we're retiring them anytime somebody's willing to retire them and replace them with something else. We really try to do that, because this whole thing with the belt mechanism here is just going to be problems. It's just going to keep being a problem over and over again. There's not really any shimming we can do on this. Sometimes you can shim the brush and you can make this better. I've got no space to shim. I have no leeway. It's the motor mount. So we'll snap it back together. We'll put it through some stress tests. On thicker carpets, this will be a problem. The belt will spin right off on thicker carpets. It'll probably work okay on lower pile carpets. But our problem is going to be if we get into higher pile carpets, we're going to have some problems with it. This is an old machine. The customer's actually done a bunch of weird, there's epoxy all over this machine back here where they did a bunch of weird stuff. These are bolts they added to it. It's a Frankenstein machine. You know, it was 2015 it was sold. So, I mean, at this point, the machine's 8 years old. Which is probably, you know, it's probably probably in better shape and done a better job than the Dysons at the same price point that were being sold at that time. So can't be too mad at it, but it was kind of a disappointing design. But anyway, we've got the brush working. For now, I'm not in love with it. It's not great, but you know, it's working for now. They'll get some more use out of it, which is what they're kind of looking to do at this point.